Russian army has a signal. Nuclear explosion imminent. Radioactivity will cover Poland. Radiation forces red alert. This has to do with Ukraine. Article 5 will be triggered if radioactivity hits Poland. In an emergency briefing, the Russian Ministry of Defense announced that it has placed the Radiological, Chemical, and Biological Protection Forces, RCBZ, on red alert as either the explosion of a dirty nuclear bomb or the firing of a tactical nuclear weapon in Ukraine is imminent, they said. From the information released by the Russian Ministry of Defense and unfortunately confirmed by 100% by War News 247, it appears that Moscow believes that Ukraine will detonate a tactical nuclear weapon, as it states that radioactive substances will cover Poland and also spread into the atmosphere at a distance of 1,500 kilometers. So we're talking about something enhanced. The question now is whether Article 5 of NATO will be activated if Poland is infected. Additionally, according to the Russian Ministry of Defense, Kakhasov Dam and that's the Dnieper River Dam will be blown up, they said. A dirty nuclear bomb or tactical nuclear weapon will be detonated in Kherson. 6 units of the Zaporizhia nuclear plant will be blown up. The Russian described the ultimate apocalypse scenario. And this is what Lavrov's statement on the matter said. We have information, specific information about the construction of a dirty bomb. This information has been confirmed. Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Sigoy held talks on the matter. And we see the reaction of the Western media. We are not surprised, he said. And Russia said that today that Ukraine has entered the final stage of building a dirty bomb. It is Moscow's second warning since yesterday, Sunday, but which Kiev, that is Ukraine government, and its Western allies reject. In a statement, according to the information we have, 2 Ukrainian organizations have specific instructions to build the so-called dirty bomb. Their work has entered the final stage. This is what Major General Igor Kirillov, the Russian military's head of radioactive substances, biological and chemical products, said in his statement. As he says, quote, the purpose of this provocation is to accuse Russia of using weapons of mass destruction in Ukraine and thus launch a strong anti-Russian campaign in the world, end quote. He said, estimating that Kiev mainly wants to intimidate the local population and increase the flow of refugees across Europe. Kirillov referred to Zelensky's speech in Munich last February, when he said he expressed his intention to restore Ukraine's nuclear regime. Quote, it's also noteworthy that during the special military operation, Zelensky repeatedly called on NATO countries to carry out strikes on Russia, Kirillov said, recalling that on October 22nd, in an interview with Canadian television channels, Zelensky urged the world to hit the Kremlin if Russia hits the Ukrainian president's office. Red alert for the Radiation, Chemical, and Biological Protection Forces. The Russian military has reportedly put its forces on high alert to carry out operations in radioactively contaminated conditions due to the possibility of Ukraine using a dirty bomb, quote-unquote. The Ministry of Defense of the Russian Federation has information that Kiev regime is planning a provocation related to the detonation of the so-called dirty bomb or low-yield nuclear weapon, said Igor Kirillov, head of Russia's army's RCBZ forces. The Ministry of Defense has put the forces on high alert to deal with possible challenges from Ukraine. The forces and means are ready to perform tasks in conditions of radioactive contamination, end quote, said Igor Kirillov. He's the head of the Russian Radiological, Chemical, Biological Protection Troops, RCBZ. He said the detonation of a radiological explosive device will inevitably lead to radioactive contamination of an area up to several thousand square meters. According to the information we have, 2 Ukrainian organizations have specific instructions to create the so-called dirty bomb. In addition, we have information about the contacts of the Office of the President of Ukraine with representatives of Great Britain on the issue of the possible acquisition of technology for the creation of nuclear weapons. For this, Ukraine has an appropriate production base and scientific potential, said Kirillov. According to him, quote, there are nuclear industry enterprises in Ukraine that have stocks of radioactive substances that can be used to create a dirty bomb. These are 3 nuclear in still operation. South Ukraine, Khmelnytsky and Rivne with 9 tanks of nuclear fuel. They contain up to 1,500 tons of uranium oxide enriched to 1.5%. At that decommissioned Chernobyl nuclear power plant, with radioactive waste storage facilities, 22,000 spent fuel assemblies containing uranium-238 are stored, as well as products relating to the operation uranium-235 and plutonium-239, which are the main components of a nuclear charge, said Kirillov. At the radioactive waste processing enterprise Vector, at the Pridneprovsky chemical plant, at the Buryakovka, Podlesny, Rosoka radioactive waste disposal sites, more than 50,000 cubic meters of radioactive waste can be accumulated, which can also be used as components for a dirty bomb. The Vostochi mining and processing plant mines uranium ore in 2 of the 3 mines with a capacity of up to 1,000 tons a year, said the head of RKHBZ troops. There is a scientific base in Ukraine. This is the Kharkov Institute of Physics and Technology, whose scientists participated in the USSR's nuclear program, where various experimental facilities are currently operating, including the Uragan thermonuclear facilities, as well as the Institute of Nuclear Research and the National Academy of Sciences in Kiev, where research is being conducted at the WWRM reactor using high-level radioactive materials, he said. The update of the Russian Ministry of Defense, Russia SRV, they want nukes. I find the Western rhetoric about the possibility of using nuclear weapons extremely disturbing. It is impermissible, said Sergei Naryshkin, head of the Foreign Intelligence Service, SVR, arguing that the world should not allow Kiev to acquire nuclear weapons. That the current regime in Kiev wishes to have nuclear weapons, humanity has been able to see it on many occasions, starting from the day when the president of Ukraine, Volodymyr Zelensky, spoke at the Security Conference in Munich. His ambitions to possess nuclear weapons were clear even then. The world must not allow this to happen, stressed Naryshkin, who, when asked if Russian rhetoric would leave room for a possibility of using nuclear weapons, answered categorically in the negative. The Russian Duma, Zelensky is a nuclear terrorist, they said. The president of the Russian Duma, that's the parliament of Russia, Vyacheslav Volodin, who accuses the West of being an accomplice of the Kiev regime, accuses the Ukrainian president Volodymyr Zelensky of methods of nuclear terrorism like those used by Osama bin Laden's Al-Qaeda. The methods of nuclear terrorism have not changed, he said. The ones used by Osama bin Laden are now being used by Zelensky. The US president and European leaders, by providing financial and military aid to Zelensky's regime, become sponsors and accomplices of nuclear terrorism, Volodin said. And according to Volodin, about 20 years ago, the US claimed that Al-Qaeda terrorists under Osama bin Laden had gained access to radioactive substances and that they were planning to create a dirty bomb capable of contaminating a large area with radioactivity. The threat of a terrorist attack on the US and Europe using such a bomb existed until 2011 when Osama bin Laden was killed, points out Volodin, who attacked Kiev. Kiev regime ordered nuclear scientists to build a dirty bomb, he said. They continued to bomb critical nuclear power plant infrastructure in Zaporizhia and Kursk, this causing a humanitarian disaster, Volodin underlined. So what did Peskov say? Peskov also made special reference to the complaints made by Russia regarding the dirty bomb that Kiev accused of having in its hands. The disbelief of some Western states in the information transmitted by the Russian side about the existence of a dirty bomb does not mean that the threat of using such a bomb ceases to exist. The threat is obvious, Peskov argued, noting that this information was brought to the attention of several foreign defense ministers by Russian Defense Minister Shoigu. It's up to them to believe it or not to believe it, underlined the Kremlin representative. What are dirty nuclear bombs? According to the Russians, the technologies available to the Ukrainian military do not allow for the creation of tactical nuclear weapons. Therefore, we're talking about the so-called dirty atomic bomb. The use of such ammunition will not give an instant result, but will make an area uninhabitable for several decades. No special technology is required to create a dirty bomb. Hence, Ukraine is able to carry out her threats, and in the simple version, they can simply fill any explosive device with radioactive debris. This kind of container with radioactive isotopes and conventional explosive, the explosion destroys the container and transports the substance over a large area with a shock wave. It's possible to use the so-called fizz, a bomb with an incomplete reaction of a radioactive substance. In the third option, a full charge is stored directly on the Earth's surface in order to maximize soil contamination with radiation. An example of a dirty bomb, however, that exploded unintentionally can be considered the accident at the Chernobyl nuclear power plant. So, the map of the Russian Ministry of Defense with the spread of radioactivity. This is by War News 247 Greece, and I've translated this for you from a Greek article. Please leave your comments. Thank you for your support. Kindly support my Patreon account. The daily posts are 5 videos daily, and they are totally different from what I have on my YouTube channel. Thank you so much for your support and that you find all my content so interesting. You'll find the Patreon account details in the description box below.